go by three names. I'm a retired lieutenant colonel in the United States Air Force. I'm commonly known as Dave because people mispronounce and misspell my first name, which is Burdon, B-U-R-D-O-N. Burdon is so simple, and yet people say this idiot misspelled his own name. Last name Davidson, of course, D-A-V-I-D-S-O-N. And I was born on December 25th in Devon, Connecticut, on a farmhouse. 3 minutes after 12, my mother says, so I just made it Christmas Day, which is not necessarily a good thing because everybody has fun on Christmas and I'm sitting in the corner. But when I was a year old, my father got almost lost in a blizzard and lost his way. He worked for a Singer sewing machine and gotten off the train to go home, and the blizzard was going, and he lost his way and damn near froze to death. And here he was really problem of leaving this woman with two children. My older brother was almost 2 years older than I. And so they decided they're going to move to California. They're falling for all that information coming out of Florida, California, and so on. But they were looking for better weather, so they packed up my brother and I and left. I was just a year old, so I don't remember.
Dave, what were their names? What was your mom and dad's name?
Oh, my father's name was James Grant Davidson, and my mother's maiden name was Mary Louise Lake.
You guys moved to California, and then did I interrupt you?
We spent about 3 years in Southern California, and then for some reason or other, for jobs or that, it used to be a coastal steamer that took passengers back and forth between San Francisco and Los Angeles. And anyway, we got on that and went up, and we got off in Oakland, and I was raised in Oakland and graduated from high school up there.
So you lived in Oakland for up until when you saw the airplanes, or when did you start making model airplanes out of?
Well, that was in Oakland, and of course the Depression was going on in the 20s, so my brother and I made our own toys from stuff. My father was a tool and die maker and had a shop in the garage and let us use all the tools we wanted. We'd get old orange crates and that, and cut wings out, piece of 2x4 for fuselage, and we'd play with them. Built mostly biplanes because we were living on air just after World War I, which had all biplanes in it, both the Germans, the British, the French, and the Americans. And later on, I grew up, the movie industry had gathered a bunch of old biplanes, and for some reason, out of an airport in Oakland, they staged and filmed Hell's Angels.
Oh yeah, I remember that one.
And I remember watching the dogfights over the house. And of course that was thrilling to see. And after that, one Sunday my father said there was some airplanes down near the bay in the mudflats. And they were old Jenny biplanes and making money, taking people for rides. Of course we had no money, but he put my brother and my mother and I in the old Model T and cranked it up, and we drove the 2 miles down there. And I just stood there with my mouth open watching those old biplanes fly around the pattern, taking people for rides. And that sort of dictated my future life. because I was going to the school library and getting books on aerodynamics and aircraft history and so on.
Fascinated from there on, huh?
And then after high school, of course, Pearl Harbor was bombed by the Japanese, and anyway, being from a poor family, of course, poor kids get to go to war first, and I didn't want to just be in the infantry and die in a shell hole someplace. So anyway, in the drugstore one night with some other high school buddies, and we were talking about being drafted. And a friend of ours, Ed Dunlap, came in, and we said, "What are you doing?" Because he'd joined the National Guard, and they, of course they activated him after Pearl Harbor, and they didn't have any guns. They had wooden guns. He said, "You're supposed to be guarding the coast, California coast, with a broom handle." He says, "No, I'm going to go to flying school." I said, "What are you talking about?" He says, "Well, I transferred over and I'm waiting to get called to go to cadet training." I said, "Where?" And he says, "I went to 444 Market Street, San Francisco." So the next day I didn't go to work. I went over there and saw this sergeant. Must have been 200 young men in there. He said, "What do you want?" And I said, "I want to find out about flying school." He says, "Go on over there." Anyway, I took a 2-hour multiple guest exam and a couple-hour physical and got sworn in as a private, unassigned. And a private's pay was $21 a month, which I received for about 3 months till I was called, and then over there and made a cadet, which is equivalent to a warrant officer, went up to $75 a month. And they put a whole bunch of us on a train, and why to this day I don't know. The train went all the way to St. Louis and then eastward it was, and then south all the way into Kelly Field at San Antonio.
Huh.
And they were just building what's now Lackland, but it was the Gulf Coast Aviation Cadet Center. And we were given all kinds of tests there and everything, and then sent off to what in those days was primary flying school. And when I was sent to was Jones Field up here in Burdon, Texas. And we learned to fly an open cockpit PT-19 low-wing airplanes. And after primary, we were sent to basic, a bigger airplane, still single-engine, 2-seater, and the BT-13. We used to call it the Volti vibrator because it shook so much. And at Sherman, Texas. And after that, we were sent to advanced, either twin-engine advanced to fly bombers or transports, or single-engine advanced to fly fighters. And I wanted to be a fighter pilot, so I talked my instructor at basic into sending me to single-engine advanced, and I was assigned down at Foster Field, Victoria, Texas. And they told us down there, the instructors, they said, "You already know how to fly. We're not going to teach you to fly. We're going to teach you how to retract the landing gear and control a constant speed propeller." And most of our training was formation, nighttime, aerobatics, and cross countries. And I was graduated down there and commissioned as second lieutenant and got my silver wings. And I was sent to Tallahassee, Florida, Dale Mabry Field, to fly P-47s. There's about 200 of us down there, and none of us got to go to the flight line. They were catching up on bomber production. They came in one day and changed the orders. And I was sent to Bakes Field at El Paso, Texas. I'd never been in a tricycle gear airplane or a multi-engine airplane. But anyway, I checked out in the B-24. And eventually got a crew of 9 other men in a brand new airplane, and we started for the South Pacific. And we left what's now Travis Air Force Base, but a 14-hour flight at night to Hawaii. And the reason at night is because navigation those days, we had a navigator aboard, and he could shoot the stars
Yeah.
and navigate for us. But anyway, we got to Hawaii, and what was really strange, they were at Hickam Field. They took the airplane into one of the hangars, and they removed the tail gun turret that gunner sat in with 250s and put it in the nose of the airplane, a modification, because the Japanese fighters were making attacks to the nose. We were there a couple of weeks. And it was strange because I went down to check on the airplane one day, and I was talking with some of the workers, and they said, well, you have to check with the head foreman, Igiyagi Yamaguchi, or something like that. But here, there's so many Japanese living in Hawaii, and they were the technicians and working on it. And in California, of course, we rounded up the Japanese Americans and put them in concentration camps. It was really strange. Anyway, and we flew from there to Canton Island to refuel. Had one tree on this island.
Really?
How'd you like to be stationed there for the whole
Wow.
war? And anyway, and the guy driving the 6x6 truck to take us to the mess hall was a would-be race car driver. I guess he damn near killed us. But anyway, we stayed there overnight, and then from there we went on to Espiritu Santos, which was in the New Hebrides group of islands, and joined the 23rd Bomb Squadron there. And they took the airplane away from us because they needed one. They were flying missions out of Guadalcanal, which is in the Solomon Islands, north of the New Hebrides. And they had 4 squadrons in the group, 5th Bomb Group, and 2 squadrons would be stationed at Guadalcanal making bomb runs, and then they'd come back for a rest, and 2 other squadrons would go up. So anyway, we moved up to Guadalcanal and started running missions in the Solomon Islands up there. And first bombing Bougainville, which is a northern island, and then Rabaul, which is a big Japanese base. And the Navy and Marines invaded Bougainville and built a perimeter there and captured the Japanese airfield. And then Pappy Boynton's Marine outfit and F-4U Corsair were stationed there, and they used to escort us, a fighter escort over Rabaul. And then after running a number of missions out of there, we skipped Rabaul, which is in New Ireland, Northern Ireland, and moved up to the Admiralty Islands. And we started running longer missions out of there. And eventually they wanted us to bomb Truk, T-R-U-K, Eaton Island. It's a big Japanese Pearl Harbor. And those were 10-hour missions, so they had to put in extra fuel tanks. And the dang airplane was overloaded. It was supposed to be 83,000 pounds, and we were on up over 90,000 pounds gross weight.
Wow.
And thank God the runways were at sea level, coral runways, and the air density is thicker, of course, at sea level than it is at high altitude. So I remember going down the runway with the engines, throttles forward, engines wide open, co-pilots calling out airspeed 130. This was miles per hour in those days. And not going any place. And finally I had pulled back on the stick a little bit more, ride the ground effect out over the water. If we lost an engine, you were done.
Yeah.
But that's the kind of missions we ran. And of course, we went too far to take fighter escort with us. So the Japanese had a heyday out of Truk with the Zero fighters attacking us on the bomb run.